Welcome. Join us at itpin Bobapedia. Oh, I am absolutely thrilled for today's deep dive. Seriously. We are plunging headfirst into a topic that sparks joy for so many, and I just bet you know exactly what I'm talking about. Especially if you're someone, spending your days crafting those perfect cups behind the counter at your bubble tea shop, or maybe you're like me and your daily happiness quotient is directly tied to whether you've had your bubble tea fix yet. We're focusing today on those magical, chewy orbs that settle at the bottom of your cup, the absolute heart of the bubble tea experience. Speaking of which, have you had any particularly amazing bubble tea recently? I stumbled upon this new place downtown yesterday, and honestly, the texture of the pearls, just incredible, perfectly chewy, perfectly bouncy. It honestly got me thinking, again, about the sheer variety of names we use for these delightful little spheres. Like, what are they called, really? And where on earth did all those different names come from?
That's precisely the adventure we're embarking on today. You've generously provided us with a really fascinating collection of sources, articles, some historical accounts, even Wikipedia pages and blog posts, all centered around the world of bubble tea or, pearl milk tea, boba tea, whatever you call it. Our specific mission, guided by these materials you've shared, is to unravel the history and the fascinating journey of the names used for those iconic tapioca balls.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
So we're going to meticulously explore the origins and the evolution of the terms fenyuan, then pearl, and of course boba. And we'll pay special attention, as the sources really seem to highlight this, to the truly unique and quite humorous story behind the name boba. It's quite a linguistic journey.
Humorous. Okay, now I'm even more intrigued.
It really takes us from a basic traditional ingredient right through to a term recognized globally, packed with cultural insights, and yes, plenty of that local Taiwanese humor the sources mention.
Okay, let's get into this. So before we even touch on the names that came with bubble tea itself, like pearl or boba, our sources unanimously point us to the absolute fundamental ingredient, right? The ancestor of all these chewy delights. We have to start with fenyuan.
That's the essential starting point, definitely. According to everything we've reviewed, fenyuan is the original foundational term for these small, round, chewy balls. They're traditionally made from tapioca starch.
Tapioca starch, and that comes from the cassava plant root, right? The sources make that clear. It's not like wheat or rice starch.
Correct, cassava. It's a root vegetable, originally from South America, actually, but now it's cultivated pretty much globally in tropical and subtropical regions. Its root is incredibly rich in starch.
Huh, South America. Interesting.
Yeah, and that starch, when it's processed, yields the tapioca flour or starch that's the base for fenyuan. It's a remarkably versatile ingredient, been part of culinary traditions far beyond Taiwan for centuries.
Right. And the process of making fenyuan, as described in the sources, it sounds kind of simple on the surface, doesn't it? Though I imagine getting that perfect, consistent texture is where the real skill comes in.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely an art to it.
They talk about mixing the starch with water, forming it into little balls, kneading it.
Yes, the kneading is critical. The sources highlight how carefully mixing the tapioca starch with hot water, sometimes boiling, sometimes just very hot, it depends on the recipe, creates this kind of dough-like consistency.
Dough-like, but not like bread dough, I guess.
Not really, no. Kneading this develops that unique elasticity. It's got a very specific, almost rubbery or bouncy quality that's characteristic of tapioca. Getting the hydration level and the kneading time just right is absolutely key to the final texture. Too much water, it's mushy. Too little, it's hard.
Okay. So you form these little balls, you knead them, and then you boil them. The sources say you boil them until they float to the surface.
Exactly. Boiling does the magic, really. It gelatinizes the starch, cooks it through, turning the opaque white balls translucent and, crucially, chewy. Once they float, that's the signal they're cooked.
But it doesn't stop there, does it? For bubble tea pearls, there's usually another step.
Correct. The process isn't quite finished for their starring role in drinks.
Right. The next step is often the ice water shock, isn't it? I remember reading that in the sources.
Yes, that's a common technique. Plunging the hot, cooked fenyuan into ice water serves a couple of important purposes. First, it immediately stops the cooking process so they don't get too soft or mushy.
Ah, stops them overcooking. Makes sense.
And second, it helps them firm up slightly, maintain their individual shape, and prevents them from clumping together into, one giant tapioca blob.
Nobody wants a tapioca blob.
Definitely not. It's a standard technique used for lots of starches and noodles, actually, to ensure that perfect al dente, or in this case, QQ texture.
QQ. We have to talk about QQ later. But first, the final step for Fenuan before they hit the cup, the syrup soak. Crucial for flavor, right? And keeping them soft?
Precisely. Soaking them in syrup is key. The most common type, as mentioned frequently, is brown sugar syrup. This soak does several things. It infuses the otherwise relatively bland tapioca balls with sweetness and a distinct flavor profile. Brown sugar gives that lovely caramel note.
It's often what gives them their color, isn't it? That dark brown or black color we usually see.
Exactly that. Tapioca starch itself is naturally white or maybe slightly off-white. The deep black or dark brown color we associate with most bubble tea pearls primarily comes from them absorbing that rich, dark brown sugar syrup. Although, it's worth noting some commercially produced pearls might also have caramel coloring added during production just for consistency.
Gotcha. So brown sugar syrup is key for flavor and color. Okay, so putting it all together, Fenuan is the base ingredient, these chewy tapioca balls. The technique for making them has been around for a long time in Taiwan. They were already a beloved component in traditional Taiwanese desserts and snacks, right? Like served warm or cold with sweet soups or shaved ice long before they ever found their way into a teacup.
That's a really important piece of context from the sources, yes. Fenuan weren't invented for bubble tea. They were a pre-existing, popular chewy element in Taiwanese food culture. Think sweet soups, shaved ice toppings.
Like tangyuan, but made with tapioca, sort of.
Similar concept of a chewy ball in a sweet context, yes. This existing popularity and familiarity made their transition into a drink a natural step, even if it was a revolutionary one at the time. They were the chewy core ready for a new application.
Okay, so we have Fenuan, this traditional chewy tapioca ball already popular. Now, how did we make the leap from just calling them Fenuan to calling them pearls? This is where the story shifts to the 1980s in Taiwan, doesn't it? Right at the supposed birth of bubble tea.
Exactly. The 1980s, specifically the mid to late 80s, around 86, 87 in Taiwan, is widely cited in the sources as the period when bubble tea, as we recognize it, burst onto the scene. And this origin is famously linked to a friendly, but apparently quite long-standing, rivalry between two particular tea houses.
Ah, yes, the great origin debate. Our sources definitely mention the two key players claiming the invention, Hanlin Tea Room, which is in Tainan down south, and Shui Tang up in Taichung, more central Taiwan. Both claim to have created the first pearl milk tea right around the same time.
Indeed. The sources detail this fascinating, apparently decade-long legal dispute between the two establishments. Each presented their own timeline, their own evidence for who was truly first.
A 10-year legal battle over who put tapioca balls in tea first.
Wow. It seems so. But ultimately, after years in court, the sources note that neither tea house was able to definitively prove their claim, or, crucially, secure a patent or trademark for bubble tea, or pearl milk tea. The courts couldn't decide.
Which, maybe in hindsight, was actually a huge factor in why bubble tea was able to explode in popularity, right? Across Taiwan and then globally. No single company owned the whole concept.
That's a critical point raised in some analyses we looked at. It allowed for widespread imitation, adaptation, innovation. Basically, it fueled its rapid growth because anyone could make and sell it.
Okay, freedom to innovate. Makes sense. But back to the name Pearl. How did Teach Sun Zhu Cha, literally pearl milk tea, actually come about? Let's start with Chen Shui Tang's story, the one from Taichung.
Right. The Chen Shui Tang narrative, which is widely reported in the sources, places the moment in 1987. An employee named Lin Shui was apparently in a staff meeting. Probably a bit bored, who knows?
Maybe. So picture this meeting. Discussing new products, maybe.
Likely something like that. Yeah. And she, apparently quite spontaneously, decided to add something to her drink.
She added her favorite childhood snack. The sources specifically mentioned that her go-to treat as a kid was Fenuan, so she took some prepared Fenuan they must have had on hand.
Presumably for other desserts.
Yeah, and she just plopped it into her iced Assam milk tea that she was drinking at the meeting.
A simple act. Adding a familiar chewy treat to a popular cold drink. But according to the Chen Shui Tang version relayed in the sources, something visually striking happened. As a black Fenuan, remember, likely soaked in dark syrup, settled and swirled in the milky tea, they apparently looked just like black pearls. You know, OJ zoom.
Ooh, like little dark, shimmering jewels resting at the bottom or bouncing around in the light-colored tea. That is a lovely image. Very evocative.
It is. And according to their account, that visual resemblance is precisely what inspired the name, pearl milk tea. It was a direct, almost poetic description of what they saw in the cup. The appearance gave it the name.
Okay, that's Chen Shui Tang's story. Black Fenuan looking like black pearls. But Hanlin Tea Room in Tainan, the other claim it, they have a slightly different origin story for the name Pearl, also tied to appearance, but involving white fenyuan.
Correct. Hanlin Tea Room's founder, a Mr. Tu Sung Ho, tells a story dating slightly earlier to 1986. He claims he was wandering through a traditional market, Yamulia Market in Tainan, and saw white fenyuan being sold.
White fenyuan. You don't see those awesome today, though they definitely still exist. Sometimes they seem a bit smaller, too.
They can be, yeah. And the sources note that Hanlin Tea Room actually still features these white pearls prominently today. They often call them white jade pearls, Hichi Bayu Sunzu, which sounds quite elegant.
White jade pearls. Nice.
So Mr. Tu's claim is that these white fenyuan he saw were shiny and translucent, and they immediately reminded him of white pearls. So he bought some, went back to his tea house, and added them to milk tea.
And because they looked like white pearls.
Exactly. Because of that visual likeness, he says he named his creation Jorher.
Interesting. So different color pearls, different locations, slightly different timing claims. But the core reason for the name Pearl is the same in both stories.
That's the consistent thread, yes. Whether it was black fenyuan looking like black pearls, according to Chun Shuitang in Taichung, or white fenyuan looking like white pearls, according to Hanlin Tea Room in Tainan, both origin stories presented in the sources attribute the name Zunzu, pearl, to the visual resemblance of the tapioca balls swimming in the milk tea. It was all about how they looked.
Appearance is everything, apparently. Okay, so we've gone from the basic ingredient, fenyuan, to the name pearl, inspired by their gem-like look in the tea. But then came a term that, especially outside of Taiwan, maybe became even more synonymous with bubble tea itself. Boba.
Ah, yes, boba. And this is where the story, as really highlighted by the sources, takes a truly unique and wonderfully Taiwanese turn, often described, as we mentioned, using that phrase, donbu, Taiwanese humor.
Taiwanese humor. Okay, I'm ready for this.
The sources clearly state that bubble tea is also very commonly referred to as dupa inja. It's not just pearl milk tea.
Right. And crucially, the sources explain that down in southern Taiwan, where Hanlin started, a distinct difference between char, pearl, and boba, began to solidify. It wasn't just two names for the same thing anymore.
That's exactly right. Over time, particularly starting in the south, the term bopa became specifically associated with the larger size of tapioca balls. They started making bigger ones.
Bigger ones, okay.
And so jones, or pearl, then came to refer, by contrast, to the smaller, more standard size pearls, the original size, perhaps. So boba became a direct size descriptor, large.
A size differentiation, that makes sense. Small pearls, large boba. And the origin story for this name, boba, specifically for the larger size, well, the anecdote found repeatedly in the sources is quite specific and highly entertaining. This is where things get really juicy, isn't it?
It's quite the tale. And it definitely leans into that playful, maybe slightly risque Taiwanese humor the sources mention. This specific anecdote places the origin point around 1988. So just a year or two after the supposed invention of churl milk tea itself.
Okay, 1988. And again in Tainan, right? Seems Tainan was a real hub for this early innovation.
It seems so, yes. In Tainan, at a particular small street vendor stall or shop, the sources consistently name the shop as Hia, which translates to grasshopper.
The grasshopper shop, I love it. A humble street vendor.
Exactly. A seemingly modest setting for a name that would eventually travel the entire globe. The story, widely cited in the material we looked at, is that the owner was looking for a catchy, memorable name for their version of the drink, which featured these new, larger tapioca bowls.
They needed something to make their big pearls stand out.
Precisely. And the inspiration, remarkably, came from the entertainment world, specifically from the figure of a very popular Hong Kong actress at the time, Ye Zima.
Ye Zima. Okay. And she was known for her ample figure. I think the sources use the phrase Shengwei Fanglin, which is quite a direct description, meaning ample bust or voluptuous.
Yes, the sources are quite explicit about this connection. Ye Zima was a big star in Hong Kong cinema, and her fame extended to Taiwan. She was particularly known, very publicly, for her voluptuous physique.
Okay.
And the owner of the Yuzu Grasshopper shop was apparently struck by an idea inspired by her famous figure.
Okay, I think I see where this is going, and it's delightfully cheeky.
Yeah.
They were already using fenyuan tapioca balls that were noticeably bigger than the standard pearls everyone else was using for their pearl milk tea.
Exactly. They had this larger size product. And making a direct visual comparison between the larger size of their tapioca pearls and the actress's prominent figure, they decided to borrow a specific term, Oop.
And no, itself. That was slang at the time, wasn't it? Slang used in the Hong Kong entertainment world, and it quickly caught on in Taiwan. For
Hmm.
exactly that, for someone with a voluptuous figure.
That's what the sources confirm, yes. BOBA was contemporary slang, specifically referring to large breasts. It literally translates more like wave tyrant or bulge champion, but the slang meaning was very clear.
Oh my goodness. Wave tyrant. Bulge champion. Okay.
So the Tyria shop owner, in a stroke of rather audacious marketing humor, renamed their large pearl bubble tea Bobanicha, literally boba milk tea. They were making a direct, humorous, and yes, slightly risque comparison between the generous size of their tapioca pearls and the famous actress's physique.
Wow. That is bold. So the name boba, which is now known globally, for the larger size of tapioca pearls, literally originated as a playful size-based comparison to a celebrity's body shape, rooted entirely in local slang and street-level humor. That's absolutely unforgettable.
It really is. It perfectly highlights that unique blend of casual humor, pop culture awareness, and marketing ingenuity that you often find in Taiwanese street food culture. It certainly wasn't a name conceived in a corporate boardroom.
No kidding. A street-level, culturally specific joke that just stuck. And apparently it really resonated. This regional size distinction, with boba meaning large, started to spread beyond just that one shop.
It did. The sources mentioned that this size classification pearl for small, boba for large, started to become more widely recognized throughout Taiwan. As bottle tea shops that originated in the south, like Tainan, expanded their businesses northward towards Taipei and other cities, they took this terminology with them.
So the concept of walking into a shop and ordering either zhenzu cha for small pearls or bobud cha for large pearls became pretty common across the island. You had a choice.
Exactly. It became part of the bubble tea ordering ritual in Taiwan. But the term boba really took flight, and its meaning began to shift and broaden significantly when bubble tea culture started traveling beyond Taiwan's shores.
Right, especially when Taiwanese immigrants began opening bubble tea shops in North America, places like California in the late 1980s and particularly the early 1990s.
Precisely. The sources point out that these pioneers, bringing this beloved drink to a new audience, often used the name Bobapedia when introducing and promoting it. Maybe because the larger pearls were more novel, more impressive.
Or maybe just because boba sounded kitschy.
Could be a mix of factors. But because ku was used prominently on menus and signs, the anglicized term boba started appearing everywhere, especially in areas with large Taiwanese communities like Southern California. The sources give examples of early shop names like Boba Tea House or Boba Planet.
Right, I've seen places like that. Boba King, Boba World.
Exactly. And what happened then, particularly in the West, is fascinating from a linguistic perspective. For many non-Taiwanese speakers encountering the drink for the first time, boba wasn't understood in its original context, as a specific size distinction linked to Taiwanese slang about an actress.
Yeah, how would they know that backstory?
Right. So it simply became the easiest, most common, most memorable term to refer to any of the chewy tapioca pearls in the drink, regardless of their actual size. The nuance got lost in translation, essentially.
It just became the catch-all term, the shorthand for the chewy things or even for the whole drink. Let's go get boba. From a specific, humorous nickname for large pearls in a Tainan street stall to the general, globally recognized name for the tapioca pearls in bubble tea. What a journey.
It's a truly remarkable semantic shift for a word, and the level of its international adoption, its mainstream status, was officially recognized relatively recently.
Yeah.
The sources make a point of noting that the term boba was added to the Oxford English Dictionary in April 2018.
Into the OED. Wow, that's like linguistic arrival, official global recognition.
It's a definitive marker, yes, of its establishment as a widely used and understood English word, far removed from its very specific origins.
Okay, mind blown a little bit by that boba story. So let's try and connect all these chewy dots clearly now, pulling together everything we've learned from the sources. We have Fenyuan, pearl, and boba. What's the final clear picture of their relationship and their differences?
Okay, let's synthesize. Based on the sources, we can break it down like this. First, fenyuan, that's the foundational term. It refers to the tapioca ball itself, the ingredient, the general concept of these chewy spheres made from tapioca starch. It's the original name for the thing itself.
Okay, fenyuan is the base, the what it is in the most fundamental sense, like flour is to bread.
Good analogy, precisely. Then, curl and pearl and boba are names that came into use specifically with the invention and popularization of bubble tea in the 1980s.
Oh.
Within Taiwan, and particularly as the terminology spread from the south, these two terms primarily became markers for size.
Size, right. With pearl usually meaning the smaller tapioca balls.
Correct. The smaller, often maybe more traditional-sized balls, the ones perhaps closer to the original Fenyuan used in desserts.
And boba, specifically designating the larger tapioca balls, the ones named after Yuzume's figure.
Exactly. The bigger, arguably chewier ones.
Mm.
They're both still fundamentally Fenyuan. They're still made from tapioca starch using similar methods, but they're just shaped into different sizes before cooking.
Got it. And the sources provide some nice descriptions that really capture this size difference, don't they? I recall reading things like, tapioca balls, meaning Fenyuan generally, are usually small and transparent.
Mm-hmm.
Then pearls cha are sized between typical small tapioca balls and boba, so maybe a medium size, or the standard small size for drinks.
Yes, that suggests pearl became the default drink size for a while.
And finally, boba hose is larger than pearls, offering more bounce and chewiness. That difference in size directly impacts the texture, right? That all-important QQ factor we mentioned.
Absolutely. The physics of chewing. The larger size of boba gives it a more substantial chew, a different kind of resistance or bounce compared to the smaller pearls. It's a different mouthfeel.
So if you walk into a shop in Taiwan today and order zense, you expect smaller pearls. If you order Bobapedia, you expect the bigger ones. That distinction is still very much alive there.
Generally, yes. That distinction holds true in Taiwan. It's a crucial part of the ordering process for local consumers who often have a strong preference for one size over the other.
And this is where the global journey really changes things outside of Taiwan, especially in English-speaking contexts. Boba, or boba, often lost that specific size meaning entirely.
Yes, that's the key linguistic shift that happened during its global spread. In North America, Europe, and many other places, the term boba became the dominant English term. People now commonly use boba to refer to any of the chewy tapioca pearls in their drink, whether they're big or small.
It just means the chewy balls.
Exactly. It's become the generic, widely understood name for the ingredient. Sometimes, as you said earlier, people even use boba to refer to the entire drink itself. Let's grab some boba. The original size distinction is largely irrelevant for most non-Taiwanese consumers.
It's truly fascinating how a word born from such a specific, localized, humorous size comparison completely overtook the original, more descriptive pearl name in many parts of the world and became the de facto global term.
It really speaks volumes about the power of memorable names, cultural transmission, and maybe just the sheer catchiness of the word boba, even divorced from its original anatomical comparison.
Yeah, boba just sounds fun. Okay, so beyond just the names, our sources also touched on some of the other positive aspects that helped propel bubble tea from a Taiwanese novelty into the absolute global phenomenon it is today.
Definitely. And one of the most frequently cited factors coming up again and again is that unique texture we keep mentioning. The sources talk consistently about the QQ texture.
QQ, can you explain that a bit more? It's such a specific Taiwanese food term.
It is. QQ doesn't have a perfect single-word English translation. It describes a specific kind of pleasant chewiness, an elasticity, a springiness. Think al dente pasta, but maybe more bouncy. Gummy bears have a chew, but QQ is different. It's more yielding, more resilient.
Right, like a satisfying bounce back when you bite into it.
Exactly. And this specific QQ mouthfeel of the tapioca pearls is absolutely central to the bubble tea experience. It's a major reason for its addictive quality, according to many analyses. It's not just the flavor of the tea or milk, it's that crucial interplay with that distinct chewiness. It adds another sensory dimension.
That QQ bite is totally key. You're not just sipping, you're chewing. It makes it more substantial, more of a snack drink hybrid.
And the drink's global spread itself is obviously a huge positive aspect highlighted. The sources emphasize its status as a significant modern Taiwanese cultural symbol. It's seen as a source of pride for the island.
A delicious ambassador.
Precisely. It represents Taiwan's modern, innovative approach to traditional tea culture, successfully adapted and exported worldwide. It's one of Taiwan's most recognizable cultural exports.
For sure, and we absolutely cannot ignore the visual element, which the sources also touch upon, particularly when discussing its more recent modern popularity. Bubble tea is just inherently photogenic. It looks cool.
Yes, its visual appeal is undoubtedly a major driver of its trendiness, especially in the age of social media. Platforms like Instagram are flooded with bubble tea pictures.
Totally. All those layers.
Exactly. The distinct layers you often see: tea, milk, sometimes fruit purees or syrups, the potentially vibrant colors of different flavors, that iconic chunky wide straw, and crucially, the visible cascade of those distinctive round pearls resting at the bottom or were suspended in the drink through the clear cup. It's all very shareable and visually appealing. It's made for the gram.
It's a drink that looks as good as it tastes and feels. It really is amazing when you step back and see the whole picture. How a simple ingredient like fenugreek, already a chewy staple, was transformed, renamed first based on purely visual resemblance, pearl, then renamed again based on size, fueled by some pretty cheeky pop culture slang, boba, and through this incredible journey of names and innovation, it became this global icon celebrated for its unique QQ texture, its cultural identity, and its undeniable visual charm. What a story.
Well, that was a truly enlightening deep dive, wasn't it? Into the fascinating, and yeah, definitely sometimes cheeky story behind the names of those beloved tapioca pearls, from the ancient fenugreek, the basic building block, to the visually inspired pearl, all the way to the wonderfully bold boba, born from the laughed about size in Tainan that journeyed across continents and even cemented its place in the Oxford English Dictionary. Incredible.
It really is a fantastic example, isn't it, of how something as seemingly simple as the name of a food item can encapsulate so much history, cultural playfulness, linguistic evolution, and even track its path to becoming a genuine global icon. The names tell the story.
They really do.
So maybe, as you're enjoying your next cup of bubble tea, whether you call them pearls or boba, small or large, perhaps take just a moment to think about that journey. How the names we use for things, even something as simple as a chewy ball in your tea, can carry these incredible layers of history, humor, and cultural significance. How does knowing these stories maybe change the way you experience and appreciate that delicious drink in your hand? Something to chew on, perhaps.
Ooh, I like that. It's a delicious thought to ponder with every single sip. I really, really enjoyed unpacking all of this with you today. It was fascinating.
As did I. It's always a pleasure to delve into these details. There's always more to uncover.
Absolutely. And with that, you can expect the next itpin Bobapedia